There are some things in travel that you dream about and look forward to for a long time. For us, that moment happened as the Crown Princess drifted toward Lombok, Indonesia, Melissa's very first stop in Asia. And the air felt warm and sticky, reminding us of a warm summer day at home in Florida. What we didn't know then was how deeply Lombok would welcome us through its people, its traditions, its unexpected adventures, and the quiet beauty that lives just beyond the better known shores of Bali. Today's episode is a journey into weaving villages, waterfalls, and clownfish filled reefs, and at the heart of it all, the incredible soul of the Indonesian people. We're Scott and Melissa, the Sunshine Travelers.
We're all about exploring the world and sharing the journey with you, whether you're a seasoned traveler, dreaming of your next adventure, or just here for the stories.
No matter where you are on your travel journey, we've got firsthand experiences, tips, and plenty of inspiration from some of the most amazing places on Earth.
So buckle up and get ready to travel with us.
Melissa, we have to start with this. Indonesia was your very first stop in Asia. Was it everything that you had imagined that it would be?
Yes, I think so. And I still remember that first step off of the ship. We could hear an Indonesian band playing on the pier, welcoming us to Indonesia. And I was just so super excited. This would be my first steps onto the continent of Asia.
And our guide Dodie from Lombok Adventures was right there. He was just outside the harbor gates waiting for us and ready to take us on a full cultural adventure that neither of us expected to really love this much.
And this day, it really has become and will be forever one of the most meaningful travel days I think that I've ever had, that I think that we have ever had together. And so, Scott, I think before we get into kind of the itinerary, we need to say, so this was a day that we had planned on our own, not booked through the shore excursions through the ship or anything like that. We ended up doing a couple of things that we booked through the ship, but really from the Great Barrier Reef on, it was really all on our own. We wanted to not be in a big group of people. We wanted to have an access to a tour guide to be able to do some things that weren't just in a big group. And we were able to do that through Viator, find some really great, tour guides and have some, private tour, which really gave us access to asking all kinds of questions and doing things on our own. And I really, really enjoyed that.
Well, our very first stop was a traditional weaving village, and it was tucked, down this narrow dirt road that was framed by palm trees. And this young Indonesian woman named Camilla greeted us with this big, huge smile and kind of led us deeper into the village. And inside this village, women sat on porches of their homes strapped into these handmade looms. And we'll talk a little bit more about what that means, being strapped into these looms. But they wove these intricate patterns by hand using threads of bright colors stretched tight across these frames. And some of these pieces, we learned, can take up to 3 months to complete, depending on the complexity of the design and how large it is. And for Melissa, being a lover of textiles, this was a dream come true.
And it wasn't just watching them weave. So in this case, it was being invited into their world. So there's so much pride in their craft, and I really felt honored. So Camilla, and then I'm not sure. I asked if it was her mom, and she said no. So I don't know if it was an aunt or just another lady that lived there. They helped me strap into the loom. And basically what that meant was you basically sat down and it laid in your lap. And you kind of put your feet against the end of it. And so then you had all the pieces just like laying in your lap.
You had something strapped around your back too. And like if you lean backwards, it put more pressure on the loom than if you lean forward. Because a few times they had you leaning backwards and forwards. And I think that's one of the reasons why they have the foot thing as well, so that they can tighten up the loom.
Yeah. And she also had told us that just to set it up, so you mentioned it could take several months to weave one piece of cloth, but just to set it up takes like a week if they're starting a new one to get all this set up and everything. All right. So then once that I was sitting there, they guided me on how to weave the materials into one of the traditional patterns for their village, or if it was one, she kept saying about their imagination, right? That some of these could just be that they created these kind of as they went. The older woman gently laughed as I tried the weaving motions. So it was just really a moment of connection as they, showed me how to do. And I would say I did 3 or 4 times back and forth.
Yeah, I wasn't sure for a while there. I thought I was going to have to um, tell them that they couldn't have Melissa uh, because I thought they were going to make her weave this whole piece of fabric there. But yeah, it was neat, and I laughed because every time they made you pull that stick back to tighten the pattern or whatever, they made you yell "tuk tuk" or something to that extent. And that was really neat.
Yeah. And so I have been to places where we have done this before. I had in Guatemala, my sister Stephanie and I went to a place, and then in Egypt, we talked about that on the podcast. We went to one, but there I just did a couple, ties on that one. But I would say here it was more, I mean, I really sat down for what would you say, probably 10, 15 minutes or so as we did this. So it was just a really great experience, that really transcended language or culture just to sit there with them and be able to have that experience. So, but I can't even really imagine what it's like to sit there for hours at a time weaving this. And we passed several people who it wasn't like each one of them was involved in kind of the demonstration. We passed some of the houses where they were just sitting there weaving. So
It was funny in this particular village, like all of the women had taken on these American names and or more English names. And so we had Camilla, but we met Lady Gaga and we
Taylor
met some of the
Swift.
kids, Taylor Swift and Ariana Grande and some of the others. And so just kind of laughed.
Yeah, and you started to say we met some of the kids, and so that was that was a neat moment too because they wanted to come out and kind of talk to us, and they gave you high fives, and then they wanted to give you nucks because our nephews do that to you. So kind of something that just transcends language and culture and stuff like that. That's something that they know, and you could kind of have that connection. And I caught that on video, so that was just a neat moment as well. And so then also we were able to buy a finished piece of the fabric here in the village. It's something that we would like to have. We like to collect little things from some of our travels, and even our grandkids really enjoy looking at. We have a few of them on the shelf, and then of course we have some other textiles and stuff like that. It really felt like carrying a piece of Lombok home with us, and we will always think about this experience by having that and the ladies and the kids in that village as we figure out exactly how we want to use that in our home.
One of the things that you mentioned while we were there is this reminded you that you needed to go into your app where you do these microloans, reapply some of those returns.
Yeah, and so I did that. So that app is called Kiva, Kiva, and that's something I've done for a number of years. And more recently, as we traveled to different places, then I tried to go and find a woman, a small business owner, an entrepreneur who is trying to get her loan funded, whether that be something like this, whether it's sewing or a little small shop, which we saw a ton of those in Lombok. And yeah, so I actually found 3 people in Indonesia to go and um, give a microloan to after we visited.
Well, from the village, our guide drove us out to a local nature reserve. This is a home to a beautiful series of waterfalls called the Kelambu Waterfalls. And getting to the nature preserve wasn't the problem. That's just when the adventure begins. We got in there, our guide arranged for 2 local men to take us up the mountain on the back of a motorbike. And because I had my crutches and the boot on my foot, he realized that I wasn't going to be able to walk up to the top of the waterfalls. And by the way, that was a long ways. I couldn't imagine that people had time.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I don't know how we would have had time to do that with everything else that we were going to do. So
he said he was going to get us transportation. Well, these two guys show up and they take us up the mountain on the back of these motorbikes. Now, keep in mind, we had only been in Asia for a few hours at this point.
And so suddenly I'm on the back of this motorbike. I mean, I don't even think we hesitated. We were just like, okay, this is what he's arranged for us to do this. And here we go. And holding on for dear life, literally. And so we were zigzagging around the pedestrians, other bikes, little kids running across the path, the ditches in the path. It was very chaotic, hilarious, and thrilling all at once. Videoed the whole way going there on my DJI Osmo. I was like, can I video this? And he was like, yeah. And then on the way back, I had my Insta360. And so I videoed that on the way back because I was like, I just can't not. And I was like almost sliding off. He did have to, stop a couple of times. And he was probably like, why is she holding on to me so tight?
Are you looking to plan your next unforgettable adventure? At Sunshine Travelers Experiences, we specialize in helping you create tailor-made travel journeys that turn your vacation dreams into reality. Whether you're craving a relaxing beach escape, an awe-inspiring cultural journey, or a thrilling outdoor adventure, we can help. Why choose Sunshine Travelers Experiences? Personalized itineraries designed just for you, expert travel advice and insider tips, seamless booking from start to finish, exclusive access to top destinations and hidden gems. We also book cruises, all-inclusives, groups, tours, and so much more. If you're unsure where to even start planning that bucket list trip, start by asking us. Then let Sunshine Travelers Experiences handle the planning so you can focus on making the memories. Explore now, sunxtravel.com. If you have any questions, email us info@sunshinetravelers.com.
Hey there, Sunshine Travelers. If you love finding incredible travel experiences without overpaying, you've got to check out Travel Deal Insiders.
It's our 3-time weekly newsletter where we send you the best cruise, resorts, all-inclusive, tours, and other really cool travel deals we find with a few cheap flight deals thrown in too. Handpicked and curated, no spam, no fluff.
We dig through the offers every week and send you only the best. Think luxury for less cruises, last-minute getaways, and travel tips to help you book smarter so that you can travel more.
Join now for just $5 a month. That's a savings of $24 a year.
Let's be real. Booking just one deal could save you so much. It makes this $5 membership like a total steal. We're talking 50 times, even 100 times, and more the value right back into your pocket.
Head to sunshinetravelers.com/deals and enter the code podcast to get this exclusive listener deal.
Travel more, spend less, skip the search. We'll see you inside.
I was afraid that we were going to pop a wheelie and fly backwards because, had this little guy up front and then me sitting on the back of that motorbike. So, but, it really was very Indonesian, I would say.
And I mean, the driver was navigating the winding dirt path. I mean, like it was nothing. And I said to you later, like he's probably been riding these motorbikes since he was like 5 years old or something like that. But I mean, dodging puddles, rocks, occasional chickens, just, whatever. And what was funny is that as we started going, like we saw other people who were probably from the cruise ship too, riding or who were just staying, but they were kind of coming toward us and smiling and waving. And so, I mean, it was just an absolutely common thing. The other funny thing about this is most places in the world and probably definitely in the US, like I would never do this. Like this is not something I would ever do, but you're just thinking like they've got to be really good at this because they've got to get around. So many people ride motorbikes. They are experts at this, even during the rainy season. So.
Yeah, and these aren't like motocross style bikes or dirt bikes. These are like street motorcycles and mopeds that they're taking up this side of this mountain, the muddy road going up the side of this mountain, and they're just getting it done.
Yeah. But at the same time, I think I was almost also thinking in my head, I can't really believe we're doing this. Like, I honestly can't believe that we are doing this.
Well, when we got up to the top of the mountain, I learned that this was only the journey to the top of the waterfalls. And our guide wanted to take us down another 150 steps to the pools at the bottom. And I just wasn't able to do that with my foot. So I sat and mingled with the locals while Melissa continued on down to the bottom with our guide. Thankfully, I was able to see the waterfalls from an overlook at the top. So I got a good view of the waterfalls. I just wasn't able to see where they landed in those pools.
Yeah, you really did get to have a good view. And honestly, there was no way Scott was going to be able to get down and then back up. I mean, it was wet and it was slippery and it was, uneven. So our local guide went down. He was carrying my purse at times as I was trying to take pictures. And of course, he was taking pictures as well. So that's the other thing about these tours too. They're there to take pictures of you and all that kind of stuff too. There was also another, so it was so interesting. We get down there and he's like, oh, there's another waterfall. It's like another 10 minutes walk. Do you want to go see that? And I was like, well, I don't want to leave Scott for that long. And I knew we had other things we wanted to do. And then I was like, okay, do you want to go swimming? Because there were people, they had made it to where the waterfall flowed and then there was a pool that you could swim in and they had snacks you could get and tables that you could sit at and all kinds of stuff. But like I said, I don't really want to leave you for that long and just be sitting there waiting. So, yeah, I mean, you could probably actually spend a half a day here as well. So when I came back up the steps, which was very strenuous, by the way, I was exhausted. I found Scott at the top and he had actually made some new friends with some locals. The very last stretch of it wasn't stairs. It was more like of an inclined pathway. And so there was all these stands selling snacks and drinks and all kinds of stuff. So here's Scott sitting at a table, chatting it up with a couple of people.
Dodie had told us earlier in the trip that most Indonesian men smoke cigarettes because it's one of their largest crops that they grow, tobacco there. And so cigarettes are very cheap. And so my new friends were offering to share their coffee and cigarettes with me. I didn't take them up on their offer, but we did take some pictures together. He took some on his phone and I took some on mine. It was just neat meeting the local people and having as much of a conversation as we could. We used Google Translate to talk like I've done before on other trips. But this was an opportunity to really be authentic in our meeting the locals and trying to interact with them. And so I really enjoyed that. We did get soaking wet on the ride back down the mountain. There was this torrential downpour, but it made sense because it's in the middle of a rainforest. And it really didn't matter because our very next step is going to be snorkeling along the Gili Islands. So we're about to go get in the water anyway. Why does it matter if we're a little bit wet?
Yeah. And side note, I think this was the only time it rained on the entire trip. Well, it rained the very last day on the ship, but we really didn't have to be outside. But other than that, even though we knew going into this trip it would be rainy season throughout Asia, this was the only day that it rained on us. All right. So Dodie took us to another small village where we would catch a boat out to a couple of the Gili Islands. And I actually think that Gili's mean islands, but they have different names and it would be the name and then the Gili. So we'll just call it the Gili Islands. But so we didn't know what we were taking. We didn't know if we were going to be by ourselves. Turns out we were. It was us and Dodie went with us and the driver, or not what would you call it? The boat captain or whatever.
Well, let's back up a few minutes because we had originally booked this tour and they reached out to us and asked, did we want to extend it and add the snorkeling part? And so we said yes. So for a little bit extra, they added on this boat.
Yeah. But we didn't know, we didn't know the details, right? Were we going to go in this boat and there was other people to take us out, kind of like we had done the Great Barrier Reef or whatever. So he takes us to this place. It just looks like it's at somebody's house. He did ask us, I guess he was communicating with them and he was asking us, okay, what size for the snorkel do you need? And do you want a life jacket? And, all these different questions as we were nearing there. But we boarded a brightly painted, and it's called what kind of boat?
A jukung.
Okay. So jukung, it's a traditional Indonesian outrigger boat. And so before we left, the crew actually motioned us to climb onto the roof of the jukung, giving us an open air view of the turquoise water. It was a little bit rough, and Scott and I honestly thought we were going to roll off the top of this thing.
Yeah. Now it's important to picture what a jukung is. It's just a little bit bigger than a canoe, wide, and it's got these outriggers on the side. And so, think about it. They've just built a platform up on top of this boat. And that day, the water was a little bit rough because there was a cyclone nearby. And here we are, we climb up on top of this thing. And that's probably the most unstable place to be, realistically. And they're like, oh, get up there. We'll take your pictures. We were just trying to hold on for dear life, to be honest.
So that was an adventure, another adventure. And at that point, I was just like, man, this is like the most adventurous, crazy day that maybe we have ever had, right?
I thought it was funny because you mentioned that nowhere did we sign like a waiver, some indemnification, that if we got hurt or killed or whatever, that we wouldn't sue them. But then we laughed. We were like, who in the world would you sue?
Yeah. So it's just a different world, which is funny because just a few days before that, I had seen a friend of ours kind of post something to that effect on, when you do a tour in the US, you sign your life away when you're in, because they've traveled extensively in Southeast Asia. So it was just funny because it was, what she posted, and then we were living that. But we reached the reef, the little island, and took all our stuff up, and the guy who actually captained the boat, he stayed up there with it. And so the crew had told us that the water was clear, but not its usual crystal clarity. And I think that's really because it was a little more rough, like you had said, from the storm. The cyclone a few hundred kilometers away had kind of stirred things up, making it a little bit turbulent, but still easy enough to enjoy the snorkeling, we didn't have a life jacket or anything there, but we did have flippers. But then we dipped our faces beneath the surface, and my goodness. So we thought the Great Barrier Reef was amazing. We thought, St. John was amazing. The Great Blue Hole was amazing. This felt like swimming through somebody's very, very expensive saltwater aquarium. So they had given us these plastic bottles filled with a little bit of bread and added some water to it, and so that we could kind of feed the fish and see. But I had never imagined like that many fish. So just schools of fish swirling around us, silver flashes, yellow stripes, electric blues. I mean, so close that we could touch them. They were touching us. Then came a surprise that we did not expect, which was clownfish, dozens of them. And so, one of the guys we're going to tell you about in a second, he was kind of swimming with us. So we almost had like a tour guide as well, because he knows, where things were. And Dodie came with us too, because I think he was like not missing out on the snorkeling. He was like, I'm going snorkeling with you. But just dozens of clownfish popping in and out of the anemones. I mean, it was just absolutely gorgeous. We'd always associated the clownfish with the Great Barrier Reef, which we saw there. But here they were again in Lombok, just absolutely beautiful. So if you listen to the episode a few back from the Great Barrier Reef in Cairns, Australia, Scott unfortunately found out that his GoPro was not working. And so when Dodie had asked us if we wanted to rent a GoPro for this trip, we agreed. We were like, yeah, sure, we would love to do that. Ours isn't working. So we just thought we were renting the GoPro for the snorkel part of it, that they would just hand it to us. But as it turns out, the GoPro came with a person to operate the GoPro and do a whole like photo shoot of everything we were seeing and of us and everything. So
he would dive down as we were diving to get closer to see the fish, the corals, the all the plant life and the marine life. And so he would be right there with us with that GoPro and just get some really good pictures and videos. So it was almost like having our own personal photo shoot there in the water. We did this, and at the end of the tour, uh, that's when we were going to need to pay for the GoPro, or for the guy with the GoPro, come to find out. And we had never really asked how much this was going to cost, but nothing had been really expensive so far, including our motorbike adventure, so we didn't figure it would be too bad. But Melissa, the total of what it cost us is crazy.
So here's the other thing. So the Indonesian rupee, I think it is. It's an Indonesian rupee. Like, so you get out like several million of them, right? So we did ask Dodie, we were like, hey, we really need to stop at an ATM. We needed a little bit of cash. So we are like, okay, about how much do you think that we're going to need? And he gave us a number, but like you went and it's like getting out how many, like millions of them, right? That's the thing. It's like, okay, millions of them. You have all these zeros. So it's really difficult to on the fly do these conversions. And we didn't have change. So we gave this guy what he told us, which I think was like 200. I think he told us like 250,000 or something like that. I don't know, maybe 250 million. I don't even know. So anyway, we just gave him that. We told him, can keep the change or whatever. And so once I was able to get my phone and do the conversion, $10 for not just renting the GoPro, but having him do all the photography. And what was so crazy is he was like, hey, do you have the GoPro app on your phone? I'm just going to like send them to you like right here. And, as we rode back or whatever. So it was just absolutely unbelievable.
And that $13 actually included giving him a tip.
Yeah, that was the extra, keep the change. We don't have change kind of thing. I mean, absolutely crazy. And then he got to go snorkeling and everything. But the other cool thing about it, just besides the fish, is also the amount and the diversity of coral. So now you could tell that right around that island that they were doing some coral like rebuilding type stuff. Like we've seen that at a couple of aquariums where they're like, we use this coral and we attach it and let it grow, but you can kind of see that they were doing that there and protecting their coral and that was growing back. But not just coral, it was like also like the anemone and it was other things like that. But it was just fantastically beautiful. And the thing about having him with us to take all these pictures is he knew where things were. And so then he was like, oh, let's swim a little farther. I want to show you this and that. I mean, it was incredible.
So after we finished snorkeling, the jukung carried us to a quiet beach that had this little small restaurant that sat right on the sand. And we had a meal called nasi goreng, which is Indonesia's beloved fried rice. And this version was very special. It was homemade, it was tons of flavor, and it was topped with this perfectly cooked egg. They served it with a small dish of homemade sambal on the side. Now, I like sambal. That's something that we keep here at the house. But the sambal that we can get here in the US is, I don't know, it's like a more of a liquidy paste or something like that. Where this was just made with, you could tell, fresh tomatoes and peppers and onion, and it was almost like a salsa consistency or something like that.
And would you say that it's like the comparison of going to buy, so let's say Mexican salsa, for example, going and buying Mexican salsa from a grocery store versus making your own? And then this was kind of like, instead of going and buying the sambal in a container, like fresh made.
Yeah. And that's what, Dodie told us because he was sitting there with us while we were eating, and he actually joined us for lunch. And he said that he makes his own as well, but he said he makes his more spicy.
So they grow those peppers there. We actually learned that Lombok means spicy.
Yeah, or chili.
Chili. Okay. Yeah. Okay. And so, I mean, that's very important to them, like those spices. And of course, they eat very, very spicy food. And so ours was toned down and I had, just a little bit of that sambal. And I think he was like, just try a little bit. I mean, suddenly the flavors just absolutely made perfect sense. It was really a part of the people there. And I want to say too, that the nasi goreng, that was something that Colin had told us about to try in Malaysia. So because the people have moved and then Malaysia is such a melting pot of people. But that was one of the dishes, that fried rice that he had told us that we needed to try once we got to Malaysia, which would be next. So we were excited to try their version of it here.
Yeah, and so this restaurant just had these picnic tables where you could sit with your toes in the sand. And we just stared out over this turquoise water, and It was really simple food, but the view was unbeatable.
I told Scott, like anywhere else, it was $1 million view, right? I mean, so easily it was $1 million view. And it's just this little thing on the beach, like you said, with the picnic tables and just absolutely delicious food. So after that, he wanted to take us to one more small island, which I think is known for taking pictures. And I've seen a lot of pictures. They have like a kind of like a backdrop there. And he said, "Oh, we need to go take pictures." But we told him, we were like, "Dodie, we have to go back to the ship." Like, even though we had told him several times during that day, like, this is the time we need to back. We said, okay, because he had told us it's going to be like 15 to 20 minutes back to get on the boat to get to the car. And then we knew about 30 minutes to get back to the ship. So we were like, we need to go now. We had given ourselves a buffer of about 30. We made it back to the ship with only like 15 minutes to spare. So thankfully we did give ourselves that 30 minutes, and we are never even that close. We like to be like even 30 minutes before like the all aboard time. But thankfully another one of the tours was getting back, one of the excursion tours getting back at the same time. So yeah, we made it back, but it cut a little bit close for our comfort.
And that's one of the things to remember is when you're booking your own excursion, that boat's not waiting for you. If you're late getting back, you may pull up and see that ship backing off the dock, and they're not going to come back and pick you up. And then it's your responsibility to make sure that you get to the next place. Whereas if you book this excursion from the ship, they have a guarantee that if you don't get back in time for some reason, traffic or flat tire or whatever the reason that they don't get back, they know and they have communications with the ship, and so maybe they'll wait for you. But B, if you can't get back in time for some reason, they're going to get you to that next port.
And so I will say that they did have on the ship, like as you were leaving, and they told us every day, take a picture of the information, which was, here's the port authority, here's some phone numbers, here's who to contact if for some reason you need to contact that. So that was good information, and I would just take a picture of that. I will say we also carried our passports with us. We had credit cards with us just in case, right? So that because from Indonesia, Malaysia was next, so it was absolutely a different country. And so I just carried that stuff to be on the safe side. But all in all, the experience that we had, I don't think could ever be matched with one of the excursions from the ship.
Absolutely not. So Melissa, why don't you kind of just wrap it up, your perspectives on Indonesia and your first visit to Asia?
Yeah, so this was, like Scott said, my very first stop in Asia. I think that Lombok is what would you say? It's very not touristy. You are there in their local culture. I mean, I think there's a few places in some of those islands that may be a little more resorty. I will say that we did talk to a couple who went to a hotel on the island and just hung out. They may have gone to the pool and gone to their bar and that kind of thing. And maybe that was a little bit more touristy. But the things that we did, the places that we went, were not. Bali is very close to Lombok. And a lot of people, Bali is probably one of the places in Indonesia that most people have heard of. And it is very touristy, very resorty. I mean, as a matter of fact, I think that more Australians go to Bali for vacation. Several people, I heard them, they're getting off the ship and they were going to go spend 6 weeks in Bali or a couple weeks in Bali. So it's very much traveled by Australians. I think that for me, Lombok was everything I had hoped for and more because it was so authentic. I think authentic is the word that I'm looking for. The people were so kind, everybody that we met. The culture is very rich, and everywhere we went, we felt welcomed. And I want to say, not that things don't happen, but we felt very safe as well. I think that having tourists is such a huge part of their economy and how they make money. And also when we were there in November, it was going toward their low season because it was the rainy season. I asked the guy who took me down, that I walked with down to the waterfall and back, how many times a day he does this. And he said, well, right now once. He said, but in August, September, he would make that journey 4 or 5 times a day with different people. So it just goes to show you how seasonal that is. And then, of course, how much that affects their income, depending on the amount of time. So I definitely wish that we had had more time. But I also feel like, wow, I mean, what we did in that number of hours was crazy, right? If we had had more time to go and visit some of the rice fields, we got to see those from a distance, and the people out there working those, they were beautiful. We did stop at one place and take pictures, but unfortunately it was a little bit cloudy then. But they were just beautifully terraced on the side of the road. And I would also want to stop at a few of the temples. We just didn't have time to do that. But I just, as much as we got to do and see in such a short time, I think we got a really good overview of the island and a taste of what to see and do. And if we had more time, just to honestly go to some of the different gillies and and snorkel, right? It was enough snorkeling for the rough it was and the amount of time we had. We probably snorkeled for about an hour probably or so, would you say?
Yeah.
And but just to be on one of those islands, some of them you can stay on and just relax and snorkel and eat.
Well, this day reminded us that the world holds stories and places where you at least expect. Bali's wonderful, but Indonesia is so much more than Bali. Lombok opened our hearts in a way that we didn't really see coming. And when you can open yourself to a sense of adventure, you never cease to be amazed by the unforgettable stories the world gives you. And these are stories that you're going to carry for the rest of your life.
Well, that's it for today's episode. Wherever you're listening from, we hope we've added a little spark to your travel dreams today.
If you've been enjoying the show, a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform goes a long way. It helps new listeners join our Sunshine Travelers family.
Be sure to follow or subscribe so you never miss an episode.
And join us on Instagram or Facebook at Sunshine Travelers Podcast. Remember, that's Travelers with 1 L.
And if the stories, tips, and adventures we share bring a little sunshine to your week, you can even buy us a cup of coffee now. You'll find the link in the show notes.
And of course, share this episode with a friend. Adventure is always better together.